That's good. So thanks, guys. Thanks for coming back and joining us for another. I guess I don't want to call it an episode. I feel like we're doing a TV show, but for our next installment in our leadership series. So we've been talking about a number of things, but as most of you know, it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we talked about mental health last month, and we're back. I mean, last week, and I encouraged Mike to look into that a little bit more and share some insights. He shared the article that he put out on LinkedIn this week, and some of you had an opportunity to take a look at that. But we wanted to dig into that just a little bit deeper because I thought that there was real value in what he uncovered and certainly the insights he has around it. Mental health and the mental health of our team members is not always the thing that is top of mind, and certainly doesn't always get the attention and the intention that it deserves. And since we have this platform, we're using it for that purpose today. So we really appreciate you all being here. We apologize for any technical barriers that were created on our part, but we're glad that you're here. So we're just going to get into it now. Today's format will be slightly different. If you've joined us in the past, we've kind of done a back and forth, but today I really thought that it would be beneficial for me to just ask Mike some questions that he doesn't know I'm going to ask.
So official.
I know.
Okay,
but I mean, I wanted you to get, firsthand, genuine answers. And of course, that increases his stress level. But hey, we're talking about managing stress among a number of other things. So again, it's great to see all of you guys. I'm glad you could join us again. And by all means, if you think that there are people out there that could benefit from us and what we're sharing, benefit from what we're sharing, make sure you invite them or send them the links to get in. So today we're talking about mental health in the workplace and the crisis that existed before coronavirus. And, the focus has been on how much stress and anxiety related to the coronavirus has impacted the workplace and its team members. But we really needed to look at how there were things that were existing before we ever got here. And so this was one of those. So what do you want to talk about first? I know I've been going on. Oh, housekeeping. So if you are currently unmuted, I just gently request that you mute your microphone just so that we can cut down on a little bit of background noise or interference. Feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you have a question or a comment, and we will be monitoring the chat room. So if you would like to share your comments in the chat room, I know Tony, who is sometimes joins us, is the king of the chat. So use that chat to share information, share links, and ask questions, and of course for your comments. So this is Dr. Michael E. Perry, PhD. He is our resident human performance expert here at Catalyst, and gives us really our edge in terms of how we look at human performance, overall wellness, and mental health in the workplace, and really helps us to develop programs that really can target that and speak to those things. So today we're talking about mental health in the workplace and really kind of digging deep into the article that he put out this week, entitled Exceptional Leadership is Great Medicine. So before we really get into all of that content, because we all came in just slightly stressed, I think we need to do a little bit of deep breathing. I think everybody needs to take a deep breath. And so I invite you to just take a second, sit back, take a deep breath before we really get into anything, because we want you to be here and now and focused on what we're talking about. And of course, everything that we discuss here in our leadership series really digs into what the impact is of leadership. So we're talking about mental health, the crisis before coronavirus, and the impact of leadership as it relates to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so are you gonna? I tell you what, as you all just, because we're not going to do an official like a breathing exercise necessarily, but I just want you to just kind of just sit and we want you to reflect just a bit. But we want you to reflect on something more positive, maybe something that you're grateful for, and just reflect on what that is, because there's a lot that you could probably pull up in terms of stress and all that, but simple things. What are you grateful for? And I want you to think about that for a second, and maybe ask a couple of you to share what that is. So would anybody like to share what that is? Just one or two things that you are grateful for at this moment.
Sure, I do a gratitude journal entry every morning. So today, as with most days, I start off with saying I'm grateful for a new day, new opportunities, new learning, new growth, new connections, and new ways to serve.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Who else? And welcome. Mm-hmm.
I've been thanking the Lord a lot lately that we are not in a situation in our family where we have to sacrifice either our health or our finances that obviously would impact our health, and that instead that we just have the responsibility to help those in our midst, our employees, our family that doesn't have that advantage.
That's good.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else?
I'll share. This is Brian. I'm thankful that I've got that I'm connected to other high quality leaders, leader people, coach people, consult people. Like that, this is a time where a lot of people are isolated, and the ability to share ideas and hear thoughts from other people, I think it's something that it's easy to take for granted when you have it, and I'm something I'm thinking about right now.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those of you that are also sharing in the chat. We appreciate that so much. We encourage you to just take a little bit of time each day to reflect on those things. And Bill, thank you for sharing that you're doing a gratitude journal. I think it's helpful. It helps us in terms of our perspectives, our mindset as we go forward into whatever the day brings, which, as we know right now, often can be uncertain. So we appreciate you all sharing, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to hear from anyone. Was there anyone else that wanted to share what they're grateful for? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all. And of course, if I step on your words or I overpower you while I'm talking, please let us know in the comments in the chat, and feel free to drop your comments in the chat. So we're talking about mental health in the workplace. And I have a special guest, Dr. Michael E. Perry, here with me. And, it's an interesting thing, right? Because a lot of people think, well, anything that has to do with how people show up or their performance in the workplace has very little to do with their overall mental health. I think that's an interesting statement to make, but that's what I've heard. And so I of course, I'm being a little provocative with that. But I often have said to leaders in the past that we approach our team members and the people that work with us as if they are optimally functioning. Right? Our expectations, our performance measures, our evaluations are based on someone who is 100% whole and 100% available, attentive, engaged. And that's really in error. And we really have to position ourselves to be open and mindful that not everyone is at their best every day. So, Dr. Perry,
yes, ma'am.
Tell us a little bit about mental health in the workspace.
Well, here's the thing, and we're gonna talk about mental health in the workplace, but we're gonna talk about it from a different perspective, because of course we're in the time of coronavirus and COVID-19, and that is a crisis. But as you saw in the title, mental health has been a crisis in the workplace for years. The problem is that, and the president has referred to it as COVID-19 as a hidden enemy. Well, nothing is hidden as well as this mental health crisis. Why is that? Well, a lot of you would probably, the first word that would come to your mind would be stigma. And if that's what came to your mind, you'd probably be right. When is it okay? Even in times now where we're kind of opening up to the idea of addressing mental health issues. And if you look at all of the articles out there, the reports that are done, the research that's done, yeah, we're more open to the idea than we were in the past, but we're still in a place where people are not readily going to come up and raise their hand and say, hey, I have this issue, right? So I want to show you all because I want to take a slightly different tack, if I could, on this idea. And if you read that article on LinkedIn, you may be able to predict where we'll somewhat end up. But I want to kind of take a different approach to that, because programs are nice, and I believe in solid programs and approaches and resources for people. But sometimes I think that our target is in the wrong place, right? So I'm going to share this screen with you again and run through a few of these. And I have to warn you that this particular time that we're going to spend here is going to leave you feeling maybe a little lacking, because we won't be able to really do a topic like this full justice. But I do want to plant some seeds, hopefully. So let's go there real quick. And so, and if you all can see that, first thing you should know is that the numbers you're going to see, any numbers that you see around mental health prevalence, don't believe necessarily what you see, because just inherently by its nature, these numbers are underreported. People don't want to raise their hand because despite what we say in the open, oh, we got you, we'll support you, what people's experience is that once they raise their hand, it costs them something. And people don't necessarily want to engage in things that are going to cost them something, right? Particularly not their livelihood. So important to recognize and appreciate. All right. Okay. So newsflash, we already said it, right? Yeah, there's a hidden enemy, and the enemy has been hidden for years. And that is this mental health thing in the workplace. I'm going to jump right into a couple of numbers to give you some perspective. Here, the numbers aren't necessarily important. This is 2017. As you see, anxiety disorders lead the way in the workplace. We're going to show you another graphic real quick. Well, amongst adults, I should say. Anxiety disorders lead the way by far. Then you have depressive disorders, major depression, bipolar, things like that, and then everything else. Substance abuse isn't quite accounted for in this particular graph, but this just kind of gives you a feel for what the majority of the struggle is out there for people. Here's another way to look at it. All right, now, how many of you, show of hands, are surprised to see that anxiety disorders account for almost 20% of mental illness every year? And we're talking, anxiety disorders, right? We're talking, PTSD, we're talking people who have, even like, OCD type things, but anxiety, that sense of worry about what's going to happen, what just happened, what do I look like, what's going to, am I going to keep my job, are they going to scream at me, etc. Or that sense of something just coming, right? So anxiety is huge, and that's really important given where we sit right now. And I'll talk about at least what my predictions are, if you want to call them that, for the future here in a little bit, and how anxiety plays into that.
Yeah, so one question that came in is, can you explain a little bit about conduct disorders?
Yeah, well, conduct disorders it's just that it is, those deal quite simply with behavior, right? People who, to use a colloquial term, people who act up, but to an extent that it is disruptive to their lives and the people around them. And so conduct disorders would be something that maybe falls short of criminal activity. Often you'll see that we're talking children, though, youth. So, but people who I'll call, I think when you think of conduct disorder, think mischief, right? You just, but misdemeanor type stuff. I'm trying not to criminalize it, but it's call it clinical misbehaving is what conduct disorder is, to put it simply. Is that the answer to the question?
Yeah, thank you.
And this you generally won't see in the workplace, though.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Why did you feel compelled to even offer your opinion on this?
On this topic here?
Mhm.
Well, okay, I'll just go ahead and take you to where I'm going. Oftentimes, there's so much talk about mental health in the workplace. It occurred to me that it seems like many people believe that someone comes into their workspace and maybe they have depression, maybe there's some anxiety disorder, there's something that happens, and they believe that this is who you are, maybe you're broken, maybe there's something wrong with you, and this was just going to happen, and so now we got to deal with this thing, and they don't account for what maybe gets someone there. They don't account for all those factors that move someone to a place where they're having difficulty, right? Where they're struggling with what we call mental health issues. But what I would like to tell everybody, we're talking like life issues, right? Mental health, physical health, it's all connected. And there's really no way around that. What happens psychologically, cognitively is going to impact our physical functioning and vice versa. Right. So they're all connected. But yeah, I think that there's not an appreciation for what an environment, what a culture can do to either benefit somebody and help them to thrive, or to take them, and push them in a different direction where they struggle. And so we put all that on, we put people in organizations with leaders who are, well, I'll just say it, toxic leaders who are ineffective or whatever, insecure. We put people in the workplace with them, and we expect the person to fix themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do enough to fix the leadership situation.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right. So take a look at this, if you will. So, and this is a survey. You can actually find this study. A lot of this work, it was compiled in the American Red Cross CEO Roundtable. No, I'm sorry, the American Heart Association, the CEO Roundtable. This report was released last year, just over a year ago, and they pull together a lot of great research in one place. And in fact, we have the PDF. We'll just drop that into the Dropbox, and when you'll get a link to that about a couple of hours after this is over. And it's very comprehensive. So give yourself some time if you want to take a look, because there's a lot of great stuff in there, even though I think there's a thing or two they missed. But they pulled together about 3 in 4 in the last year have struggled with some issue that's related to their mental health. 3 in 4. That's like 76% was the actual number, right? A lot of people. About 42% have answered yes to being diagnosed with a mental health disorder, right, at the job. But check out that bottom number, and I would love for anyone to tell me just for a second, how does that 63% strike you, right? If they've been diagnosed, haven't disclosed it, and probably won't. What does that suggest? Anybody can unmute.
And they're embarrassed or ashamed.
Okay. And say more.
Lack of trust in their leadership.
Yeah. Lack of trust.
So they're also carrying an even heavier burden than they already have. They already have the burden of the issue, and then the fact that they need to conceal it, I would guess, exacerbates the issue.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Right. So, and that tends to be it, though, right? A lot of people, even in situations where they might be able to disclose and not be judged, they are ashamed. And in many cases, people know, either from experience in that place and others, if they disclose it, then it changes things, right? And so it may cost them something. But they're ineffective, perhaps not as effective as they were. And so now it becomes about, you know, your performance and why you're underperforming, et cetera. And so people find themselves in this cycle sometimes.
Yeah. So what comes to mind for me is in a
Mike.
military environment. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
As an employer, how far can you go to even have that discussion with an employee if you think that they have some mental health issues?
As far as they will allow you to go. Right. And so, and generally the first question, if you sense that something is going on, generally the first question is going to be, you know, not, you know, anything about their mental health. It'll be, you know, are you okay? You know, is everything okay? What's going on? I mean, those very simple questions, genuinely offered, with the time and space to get a good answer, will yield remarkable information if the trust is there. And that's the key. The trust kind of has to be in place for people to feel like they can offer that to you. But and sometimes that particular conversation, the fact that you ask, is enough for somebody to say, because you know, mental health things are all about timing a lot of times, right? We take on so much, and then there's that moment in time where right question by the right person at the right time with a right amount of stress or distress yields information that you may have otherwise not gotten.
Mm-hmm. And so it is a very delicate area, but it is a necessary thing, especially if you're seeing a change in their behavior or their performance, a marked change, or a sudden onset that leads them to either uncharacteristic behavior or underperforming where they had formerly been a high performer. All key indicators that there may be some other issue or underlying problem occurring. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, what we've observed in many organizations is that this becomes an HR problem. And that often the way that leadership teams deal with it is they will divert the employees to HR or mention to HR or delegate it to HR to really give it the attention or manage the situation, meaning manage the employee. And often, unfortunately, those employees get moved from place to place without really getting into what's happening with them specifically. When you are the HR, then, you know, it becomes multifocal because you are now supervisor, manager, HR, and now in that leadership role have a responsibility to go a little bit farther than just, you know, hi, and how are you doing, as Mike said, but I noticed that there's been a change. And so it takes a lot of courage to do that, but sometimes necessary.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and oftentimes, and I'll say this too, oftentimes we think of mental health issues, or even the conversation about, you know, about suicide, which is not what today's talk is about, but we think about them as delicate issues. And I would say that for the person who's ready to respond, it's not a delicate issue. It's a very real, present thing, and for you to ask about it, it's not offensive. It doesn't push anybody in any direction. It just opens a door. And so, because oftentimes when we think of things as delicate, we will often tiptoe, right? And so there's no need to tiptoe when it's time to have the conversation. It is 100% okay to have the conversation, to check in on people, right? So, but
Mike.
Yes. Mike. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, I know that they only like 63% of people diagnosed actually will disclose it. How much does the word disorder, which is used quite often, prevent people from, because I don't think, you know, anybody wants to feel like they have something that's not working properly. It's almost like, I know we've been playing around with the word. What do we use to help people be more comfortable about something that's very uncomfortable? And so even when I look at the screen, the word disorder, there's a stigma in the workforce that comes with I can't function, or I'm broken, or whatever words people may attach to that, which may be getting in the way of people releasing the information or sharing what may be helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, Ron. It's really kind of, I think, the same challenge that comes along with you're calling things mental health problems per se, versus just having maybe some difficulty in your life of a certain type. Because what I think what disorder does is it feeds stigma and potentially also feeds bias, because when you see it, it's like, man, you got a disorder, what are we going to do? And so now people begin that tiptoeing, they begin that kind of, trying to figure out how to work around things that they need to work through. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the terminology has been a problem that we've known about in psychology and in the medical profession for a long time. Because, as people kind of begin to develop things and do research and put out information, they want to categorize and put things in a certain place. And so disorder and pathology and all those things, yeah, they work for, writing papers. But when we start talking about the practical element of dealing with people, that becomes kind of a problem for sure.
So Mike,
yeah,
I was going to go the opposite way of what Tara had said.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about the employer asking the employee. She noticed, what about, the employee is going through something, knows that, they're making some mistakes. How much should they disclose to the employer?
Mm-hmm. Well, that and this is going to be it's unsatisfying answer, Cheryl. That depends, because it comes to a few things. Again, trust comes into play. Obviously, how much do you trust that person? And then and some people will disclose perhaps too much, things that they don't necessarily need to disclose. So the question becomes, what do you need to disclose in order to get what it is you need? And so if it's time, if it's resources or recommendations or adjustments in my work schedule, or what do you need to disclose in order to create a context that someone can understand so they can help you? Because I tell people all the time, sometimes you don't get help because no one knows you need it. Because if you're trying to be a hero and carry everything on your shoulders, they're going to give you more to put on your shoulders. And sometimes it requires you to say, I can't quite take any more right now. I need something different. And so I think it's important to be able to disclose, but it really becomes a judgment call for that individual. How much do I need to disclose in order to get what I need? Does that get close to answering the question?
So how much is too much?
I think it's great. I think you hit on it when you said it really does depend on the established culture and the environment. And so I think that you'd have to ask the question, as Mike was saying it, to what end? Is it to gain access to resources? Is it to be referred for services? Is it because you want different or the employee wants different consideration? What is the goal and the purpose of disclosure? And so if it is, hey, I'm having a difficult time and I need a break, then that's definitely a different conversation. Often you hear people say, I need to just take a mental health day so that I can reset or regroup. But really, it is about what is the goal of the disclosure? Is it just for awareness? Is it because you want action, or there's action that's needed? Or is it because that employee has reached a breaking point? And that really lends itself to, really, it depends on the established culture and the circumstances.
And it also shows, I think it depends on the relationship as well, right? Because there's some people, we rely on different people for different things. Support takes on all kinds of shapes and sizes. So, there may be someone you actually have a very good relationship with, and you can actually, disclose the details of what happened with your kid last night and how bad that argument got, maybe, right? Just as a way to vent and find some support. And then there are people that you wouldn't necessarily give that level of detail to, because their role is to support you by way of giving you access to certain things, or to, reassurance, but not to take in the details. So it really becomes a very individual and personal decision in terms of how much you disclose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
Can I ask a question here? Is there,
Brian.
Is there an element to this that, and I'll vulnerably display, I'm way amateur on these topics, so that changes how this comes across, but is there an element here that has to do with the degree to which the mental health challenge is sort of short term, like, you know what, like the example there of I need a mental health day, you know, I've had this stuff I'm dealing with the last few days or whatever, versus, you know, I have a bipolar disorder and it's a part of my life. I mean, is there some element here in sort of helping us to be aware and understand that some of these are sort of moments in time and they versus some sort of ongoing conditions, if you will?
Yeah, great question, Brian. I think, you know, in order to answer that, I would say at the basic level of communicating with people on a day-to-day basis, it could potentially look the same, right? Because from a leadership standpoint, you want leaders who are kind of listening and tuned in to changes. And so like the short-term thing, you know, a common short-term thing, bereavement, for example, right? Because everybody goes through, loss of a family member. And you know that's going on, generally speaking, or you may see some changes related to that. And so as leader, you're in a position to do some things that are short term. You know what? You're gonna need time. Or maybe we need to, you know, maybe we're gonna get you a card and we're gonna just add some reassurance. We're gonna surround you with some love. We're gonna maybe get you some food, and you're gonna help walk people through that short term thing that tends to be that. If it's bipolar disorder, well, that's an entirely different ballgame. And a lot of times untreated, you're going to see things related to that. So it's a different kind of discussion, and the action is different because now it becomes potentially, okay, not sure what this is, but I know, you know, it seems like you need to get that looked at, and I'm going to give you time to go get that looked at. Until then, you maybe don't need to be doing this particular task, or you need to be over here and not there, or what have you. And so you almost, if it's a serious thing that you recognize, you almost go into more of a crisis mode and a more directive mode in terms of what you can and can't do here and what we need you to do in order to regain that particular status, which for some people becomes their issue around disclosing what's happening with mental health stuff, because they know that if they're, you know, diagnosed with something, then they may have to there may be some restriction involved. You know, you see a lot in pilots. You see it quite a bit in, you know, even like the intelligence community sometimes, and certain other jobs that are considered sensitive. We got to take some more aggressive moves there, right? So, but for the leader who's dealing with these things, if it's something that you dealt with that's going to be common to everyone, bereavement being the easiest one, then I think a lot of folks are a bit more adept at what to do. And so once it steps outside of that into something else, then it's about you know, making sure that they have access to what they need. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, it's interesting because initially I was thinking of more of the, again, being an amateur on the topic, I was thinking of more of the established conditions that people might have, as opposed to something being a result of a recent kind of thing. And I'm thinking in terms of people that I've been around, either coaching or coworkers or whatever, who have been good at making it known that, you know, we've got mental, you know, short-term challenges that we should all be comfortable acknowledging and dealing with and doing what we got to do. And I hadn't really thought about it in that context. So I appreciate you talking it out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the final thing I'll say on that is that people, as it pertains to their health, it's important to kind of stand on the outside and allow them to come, you know, and to offer that up. Because a lot of people will say, you know, hey, we're open, we're cool, we will, you know, we won't judge you, etc. Come on, tell us. And so you know, people don't do well when they're tugged, but they'll know, right? And a lot of times you become the chosen one, right? People will know if they want to trust you, if they want to offer something to you. It's a matter of just staying firmly in that place of being a resource. But I believe in having multiple, and that's why a team is so important, because everyone is someone, different, right, to an individual. And so being surrounded by people who get pieces of information, a lot of times you can pull that information together and come up with something that can help people. So.
Yeah, so these are great questions, and we encourage you to continue to drop your questions in the chat. I want to make sure that we get to some of this great content that you have. And so can you share a little bit about how we got here?
A little bit about how we got here. Well, maybe let me share this. Okay. Now, again, this is 2017. I want y'all to take it in, right? 3 leading causes of stress. That's put out by the American Psychological Association. Workplace money, future of the nation. As it happens, we have a perfect storm of all this stuff, like right now, right? And so everything I've told you so far is all pre-COVID-19, really important to recognize, all right? This is also an important piece of information. Interventions offered in the workplace, and there you'll see various numbers out there, but what we know is that for every dollar spent on some type of an intervention in the workplace, it can yield $2 to $4, right? Which is pretty remarkable. The more remarkable thing is that this is all these programs are like symptom reduction programs, right? They're not targeted at potentially the source of the stress, right? Which can often be the leader. So it's important. So now, how do we know that people might be struggling for some reason at work? These are the employee engagement data. This is actually 2019. 35% of employees are engaged. That means enjoying what they do, they have purpose, et cetera. 35%, that's in the US. We have, I think, the highest in the world. I think the world average is close to 13%. Ryan Harvey, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But 35%, that's a record high. And so we're excited about that. That seems odd to me, right? 35%, which means the other 65% are disengaged, right? 13% of those are like actively disengaged. They are miserable. We're either working against the people they work with, or they're not coming to work, or what have you. The other 52%, they're just there. That's what we call presenteeism, just being there, right? Over half, right? So, but the companies that do well are like 70+% engaged. And as it happens, 70% of the variance between is explained, that is, that engagement number is explained by the quality of the manager in particular. Really key. So I'm just curious, how much of this can we attribute to leader behavior? That is the mental health problem. How much of that would you put on leaders? Would you put any of it on leaders?
Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You have a great leader, you have great results, you have great engagement. If you have a poor leader, you get poor results and poor engagement.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it all points back to leadership.
Yeah. Anybody care to disagree with that?
This is Barry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Barry, I can hear you.
Okay. I would say just from experience that I would have to, like you're saying, how much of mental health problem at work can attribute to leader behavior. I would say, of course you've got, your personal functions or someone's mindset of where they stand personally, but I think, like what Bill was saying, a leader can either add or take away from that. Like if you're already an anxious person, if you've got some mental health challenges or maybe some anxiety, a bad leader can add to that. And I just think about even the difference of what we're going through now with COVID, and I can see the difference in a leader who is planning and thinking through COVID and a leader that's not thinking, and the leader that's thinking through COVID and is keeping everybody encouraged and finding innovative ways to do things, how everybody feels peaceful and feels encouraged and feels empowered. But the other leader, they feel more anxious. They don't feel like the leader's really listening, really understanding, and it's only adding to an issue they're already having or is creating one.
Yeah. Barry, thank you. Thank you for that setup. because because I think what you said is accurate. Yet, what do we do generally when people they emerge and say, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this leader"? What we do is say, "Okay, well, can you look at it in a different way? Can we, put a positive spin on it? Can you take this Calm app and go home and just, get some peace?" We don't necessarily deal with what might be driving a lot of that engagement problem we have. So this is a term I put out there in this LinkedIn article, and I haven't actually even used it myself for years. And I got to thinking, like, wait a minute, what does the environment have to do with what we're seeing with this mental health issue at work? And why is it, we have such a prominent, profound issue in these engagement numbers? What is it? The diathesis stress model, right? And so this model, basically, this was published maybe in the 80s. And the idea behind this is that everybody comes into the world or through life and with some type of maybe a vulnerability, some type of predisposition. There's a word. Thank you. Right. Some type of a predisposition for something. For us, who knows? It may be balding, heart disease, anxiety, depression, substance abuse. The list goes on in terms of certain things that may impact certain people. But what we know through studies that have done with actual twins who are genetically identical, right? What we know is that if you take two individuals and you put them in different environments, oftentimes the outcomes are different. So the idea behind the diathesis stress model is that there's a predisposition that meets with a certain amount of stress at a certain time that then exposes that vulnerability. But if you remove or change the stress, sometimes that not only does the vulnerability not emerge, but you may discover that someone is actually resilient to the thing that they were vulnerable to in the past. So what does it mean in the workplace? And this is the key, like, if you don't take anything else from this day, is that the environment that we put people in changes the outcome every single day of what's going to happen with them and their mental health. There are some people, there's some leaders who, if you think back, these leaders, you may be them, but people get with them and they thrive. People who in other environments struggle don't, right? They actually are able to emerge, get better, right? But then you take people and you put them in other environments, and all of a sudden they get to this breaking point, and you begin to see certain things where problems begin to emerge, right? So where we put people, the environments we put them in, and the leaders that we have around them actually matters with regards to their mental health.
Yeah, and I think that really supports even the idea of talent management and having people in the right place to really capitalize on what they can contribute. But that environment covers a number of things: the established culture, the leadership, the team, the support, team environment, and support. So a number of factors that all contribute to that environment. So there were a couple of questions. One question was, what would the reporting numbers look like with people in a leadership role? So you had shared some, I think it was a couple of slides back, you had shared some data or data, depending on where you're from or what you prefer. But you had shared some information around there. So what would it look like, you think, if, I think the question is asking if they polled leadership, people in leadership roles. What would those numbers look like?
What would the, so are we talking the mental health numbers? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, the question is, when you look at the polling, it looks like it's the workforce in itself, but there are a lot of people in leadership roles that are going through or dealing with the things that we're discussing. So what would those numbers look like for people that are in leadership roles? That also deal with these issues that may not be reporting or asking for assistance, because it gets kind of scary up at the top when you got to report stuff like this.
Yeah, I would say that people in leadership roles, often their numbers perhaps are worse, particularly with regard to anxiety. Now that's anecdotal, and I'm trying to remember even where I got that from. But if you think about it, right, particularly as people elevate oftentimes their trusted circle becomes smaller, their responsibility becomes higher, and they're on the line for whatever, right? And so I think you'll see a higher stress in those individuals, especially the ones who are unable to pull in support around them, people who may be micromanaged because they're worried about how they might look, people who may ostracize folks, other people. Typically, when somebody is publicly abusive, then there's something about that particular leader, whether it be, insecurity, a lack of empathy, or what have you. But you'll often find that they're a bit more stressed, right? And so, so the numbers, and the broad numbers we showed you, it's like everybody, but you're going to find that in leadership circles, you may find more problems, but you're going to find less disclosure the higher that you go, which is why we started this initiative. We call it the Corner Man, and I haven't really pushed it because part of the thing is, a leader, they feel so isolated sometimes that they kind of want a back door to access you, right? So we don't say in public, hey, you know what, if you're that lonely leader, come see me. They find you, but I think it's important to give them that, however you need to do it, give people in senior positions some type of an escape hatch so they can go get what they need. Because it's nice to say, hey, you need to be genuine, you need to be authentic, you got to be vulnerable. Some people are just not going to do it, certainly not from the outset.
So you talked a little bit about toxic leadership, and then you went into the axis stress model and predisposition, right? And so everybody is aware or is familiar with people saying that their buttons just got pushed, or they reached their breaking point at work or anywhere, and that often can be tied directly, based on what you're sharing with us today, directly tied to toxic leadership or ineffective leadership, right? And so when we're looking at all of that, what do we do? I mean, what do we do? This is all great and wonderful information. What does it mean, and how do we use it?
Well, and really the target of that piece was really, senior leadership. It was about establishing a culture where the default is, leaders who are open and who are genuine and who are empathetic. And it doesn't mean they don't challenge people, but you challenge people, but you also look and you listen and you recognize what's going on with them, and you ensure that you're putting, as Ron Harvey likes to say, the best faces in the right places, or the best places in the best spaces. You know what I'm saying? Right faces, spaces, places. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's why Ron Harvey says it, not all. But really, it's about selecting the right people. If you look at some of that Gallup research, they say about 10%, like 1 in 10 managers are ready to be that person who keeps people engaged, who's engaging and empathetic, has a high level of emotional intelligence. Like 1 in 10, about 2 additional, so 3 in 10, 30% can be trained to be that. And so what do? Well, you identify those that can be trained to be that, and then you aggressively manage the rest to wherever they need to be. But if we're talking about people, so every day that we lose in terms of taking care of people, every day where you allow abuse to stand, every day where you allow someone who's completely disengaged, because there are disengaged leaders as well, right? And so every day you allow that person to be in place. Every day you allow someone to not take care of people, then you're exponentially losing ground.
So I know there's a lot of content here and a lot that we probably won't be able to get to, but you mentioned that you were going to share with us some things that you want people to look for. And then there are, I think on the flyer, you advertised that there are 3 things that you're going to leave people with. So can you get to that?
Did you have to remind them about the flyer? Okay, so here we go. This is probably what you should look for in 2020 and as we go into 2021. Anxiety disorders are going to continue to be a serious thing, whether you see it or not. That is there, that unrest, and really because what we have right now, inconsistency and uncertainty all around us, right, top to bottom. the way that businesses are opening, the way that states are getting back into this thing, what we're hearing in terms of guidance and instruction, we are surrounded with inconsistency and uncertainty. And so where you have that, there's going to be anxiety. And so that'll impact people in a lot of ways. You're going to see mood disorders. You're going to see this depression, this isolation that we're putting ourselves into, in particular, that separation from people. And some people are having job issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've lost their jobs. They're idle. That's going to result in a bump in mood disorders, and we're already, that's being reported already. Some official stuff will come out probably in a couple of months, but we're going to continue to see that, because I think there's going to be this effect that we're going to see. It's going to drag out a little bit. Substance abuse, you're going to see that. Liquor stores were considered essential, and there's actually a reason for that, probably, right? And so they didn't close, and people didn't stop drinking. They're drinking more now. We know that, like, right now. And so you're going to see some of those issues emerge. And you also want to keep an eye out for family problems, marital issues in particular. And given where the schools are, where kids are, particularly adolescents, I think we're going to see a bump in all those things as we move forward.
That's good. Thank you.
Sure. And here are 3 things. And these are kind of broad, because how to do it, it depends, right, on where you sit and what you do. But this is all about what we're talking about today, is really about creating a culture of what I'm calling exceptional leaders, exceptional leadership type behaviors. And so you empower people. And now it's important that leaders be able to coach, not just point their finger and direct, do what I say do rather, but to really understand the strengths, weaknesses, and to help develop people, because and we know that in cultures where people are developed, they stay longer, mm-hmm. and they perform at a higher level. We got to be aggressive about maintaining accountability. If you're a leader and you're not taking care of the people in this place, then you can't lead here. Period. Right? Now, that can be difficult for some people to do, but where it's difficult to do that, you're going to see problems. Right? Where it's difficult, where people don't take that type of action. And then just being very intentional about developing managers and setting them up to move to the next level, identifying who your next directors, your next execs, your next corporate leaders are going to be, and being very intentional about walking them through that process.
Yeah, so the time has really flown by today, and
mm-hmm.
we've actually reached the end of the discussion today, but we definitely encourage you to send us your emails, drop in the comments. You have about 1.5 minutes to do that. Any additional questions that you have or additional comments, but I did want to share this one thing that you wrote in your article, and you said the fastest path to a mental health friendly workplace is an intentional commitment to exceptional leadership that focuses on people and purpose first. Mm. And I thought that was just, it really resonated with me. And I think it really kind of ties in everything that you shared with us today. So we appreciate you taking those questions and taking the time to share what you shared with us. And thank you all for joining us today. Was there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, yeah, that was very nice. I wrote that. That's good. No, but thank you. I appreciate y'all, your questions, and appreciate you being here. And just let us know if there are other things you'd like us to touch on. We'd be happy to do it. And look for that link to our Dropbox, where you'll find the CEO Roundtable report this afternoon.
Yeah, and so my final note to you would be, if you are a leader and you are in isolation, or you don't have a team of experts around you, we want you to know that you actually do have a team of experts that are available to you. And so if you have questions, or there's any way that we can serve you or work with you to really help you balance out your resources and support you, let us know. You can contact us through our website, through email, through phone call, and we're happy to help, because it takes more more than just ourselves sometimes to really get this thing right. So we appreciate you spending some time with us today. Look forward to your comments and your questions, and hope that you join us for any of the things that we're offering next week, either a leadership roundtable on Mondays at 7:30 a.m., the break room on Tuesdays at 11:30, or back here for more in our leadership series at 11:30 on Thursdays. So have an amazing weekend, and thank you again for taking a little time to spend with the Catalyst team today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Great stuff.